This woman remained in history as, on the one hand, being the most naive and stupid during the trial, on the other hand, a demon who even before the execution did not repent of her crimes, singing Nazi songs on the death row. Elizabeth Walkenrath, before marrying Marian Mulan, was born in 1919 and was not particularly brilliant when she entered her adulthood. Walkenrath began her career as a laborer, then worked as a hairdresser. With the outbreak of World War II, Elizabeth Walkenrath was drafted into the labor force. Probably lack of money and career growth made the young girl fundamentally reconsider her views on life. The result of this reconsideration became a global change in her life. Elizabeth Walkenrath joined the SS in 1941 as part of the recruitment of the concentration camp overseers. Potential candidates were lured by the authorities with a fairly good salary, 105 Reichsmarks, as well as additional bonuses for so-called processing, which reached 35 Reichsmarks per month. Also, those who passed the selection were provided with the allocation of underwear, albeit partially. And finally, the main condition was, with the appropriate inclination and activity, it is possible to get the position of camp director in one of the outer concentration camps. Elizabeth Walkenrath, as it turned out later, fully possessed the appropriate disposition. After successfully passing the selection, her role of a simple worker was changed to the position of a concentration camp overseer. Initially, Elizabeth Walkenrath was sent in October 1941 to Ravensbrück, where she gained experience under the guidance of venerable teachers who stained their own hands with the blood of more than 100 prisoners. The zeal of new employee was noted by the authorities, and in March 1942 Elizabeth Walkenrath was assigned to one of the most terrible camps, Auschwitz-Birkenau. This transfer was fateful for the girl. There she met her future husband, SS Ratenführer Heinz Walkenrath. Beloved began his service as a simple guardian of order in the barracks, Blockführer, having risen to the rank of squad leader by that time. Elizabeth Walkenrath was a real demon for the prisoners. Already by the beginning of 1944, having received the position of a senior warden, Elizabeth Walkenrath became an absolute nightmare. The warden's favorite pastimes were unreasonable beatings for anything she didn't like. For example, the prisoner looked the wrong way, bowed her head wrong, just walked slowly, or, on the contrary, too fast. In fact, any camp prisoner whom she met could become an object for beatings and bullying. Moreover, Elizabeth Walkenrath loved to personally select those unfortunates who were destined to end their lives in the gas chambers. So Heather Morris wrote about the echelons of prisoners, for example, from Hungary, who almost in full force after the sorting were immediately sent for extermination. Elizabeth Walkenrath made her own improvements to the process of sending prisoners to their death. The former laborer loved classical music, so watching the convicts entering the gas chambers to the sound of beautiful melodies apparently gave her some kind of aesthetic pleasure. After the war, many of the former prisoners of the camp recalled that the senior warden was strongly associated with the sounds of immortal classics. The rubber club, with which Walkenrath never parted, was the main tool in her hands, as a means of punishing the delinquent and simply a way to blow off steam for any reason. Also, Elizabeth Walkenrath was noticed, if not unique, but a terrible feature. She really liked to watch the death throes, and it doesn't matter if she personally beat the victim to death, or someone else did it. Such zeal could not but be appreciated by the authorities, who in 1944 in November appointed Elizabeth Walkenrath to the post of senior warden over all the women's barracks of the concentration camp. After Auschwitz-Birkenau was closed, Walkenrath was transferred to a similar position in Bergen-Belsen. There is little information about her activities in that camp, but from what is known, we can conclude that Walkenrath did not change her habits. Even the approach of the Red Army and the Allied troops could not force Wolkernath to give up enjoying power over the lives of defenseless and tormented people. But everything comes to an end. Elizabeth Wolkernath was arrested by British forces in April 1945 and was imprisoned while the investigation of the so-called Belsen trial was going on. Amazing, but during the court hearings, Elizabeth Wolkernath stumped even the judge with her astonishing stupidity. For example, Vera Fischer, a former prisoner of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, testified as a witness. In Auschwitz in July 1942, Wolkernath was a Blockenführerin, the senior in the block in the infirmary. Once I was in severe pain. I could not stand straight. She beat me so badly that I was in the infirmary for 3 weeks. Major Munro, who interrogated the former warden, certainly clarified this point with the accused. Mrs. Vera Fischer claims that you beat her so badly that she was in the infirmary for 3 weeks. Wolkernath replied that what was said was simply not true. Moreover, during the process, the warden categorically denied the facts of torture and abuse of prisoners, assuring that there were simply strict conditions in the camp and nothing more, and she called the voiced factor of the cruel beatings of the prisoners by herself as slaps in the face. Trying to get out of it, Wolkernath demonstrated complete ignorance of the fact that some prisoners were deliberately selected for execution in the gas chambers. In the end, even the prosecutor of the trial, Beckhaus, could not stand it, throwing a remark. Are you seriously asking the court to believe this? The most narrow-minded warden of the Belsen trial, despite all of her tricks and attempts to avoid punishment, nevertheless received a well-deserved sentence, the death penalty by hanging. Realizing that this was the end, on the last night before the execution, together with her friend and comrade in arms Irma Gries, Wolkernath sang Nazi anthems and patriotic songs. Albert Pinpoint put an end to the bloody path of one of the most terrible Hitler's furies, throwing a long-deserved noose around the neck of Wolkernath on December 13, 1945.